I don't know. Maybe the Ghostface reveal just was missing Matthew Lillard's over-the-top performance. That's what the sequel needed.
You gotta have a sequel.
Hi guys, Geezer64 here, and today we're talking about the Scream franchise. This is the first time I have watched all of these movies, okay? First time viewer, first time watching it. The only one I had seen prior to this was the first movie. I'd seen the first movie back whenever I was in high school, and so I have seen it. I'm familiar with the Scream franchise. But this is my first time watching Scream 2, 3, 4, and 5. I watched all 5 of these movies over the Halloween season here. And I was like, you know what? We need to do a video. We need to talk about this. I have a lot of thoughts on this series. And, you know, I've always been very familiar with the Scream franchise. I'm not a big horror fan. I do like some of the slasher movies like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of stuff. And I also like satire looks at horror, not parodies straight up like Scary Movie, but more like something like Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I think I really love this movie, and Cabin in the Woods as well. Stuff that takes a more irreverent look at the horror franchises. So Scream was obviously right up my alley. So as far as why I never watched it, I have no idea. I don't really know why I never watched all of them. But this was the first season I sat down and watched the entire Scream franchise, and I got a lot of thoughts. So I'm going to go through each movie chronologically, and then at the end I'm going to have a ranking. So definitely stick around to the ending if you're interested in my actually ranking these movies. First up is Scream 1. The original, the OG, Scream 1. This is the one that started all, that released in 1996 and was directed by the one and only Wes Craven. The horror fans know and are familiar with Wes Craven. As I said, this is the one I previously saw. I saw this when I was in high school. No, I'm not old enough to have watched the premiere of this in theaters in high school. I just watched it in high school on on VHS. It might have been DVD. I think it was actually DVD. Whenever I first saw Scream the first time, I was very enamored with the meta approach of that movie. The way that commented on other horror movies, I always liked. And rewatching it, I have to say, there's something special about 90s high school slasher movies. This and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like these movies, I don't know, they're so nostalgic for me for some reason. I don't know. Obviously, the first Scream still holds up. The first Scream is kind of quaint in comparison to some of the things that they do in the later in the sequels. But Neve Campbell is introduced obviously as Sidney Prescott, and she's great in the lead here. Obviously, she ends up anchoring the franchise long term throughout all 5 movies. But with some success and some not. We'll get more into that. I gotta say, I love Matthew Lillard's performance in this. Shaggy from the Scooby-Doo movies, Matthew Lillard. His performance in this movie is so over the top, and I love it.
Everybody dies but us. Everybody dies but us. We're gonna carry on.
I love it. It's so crazy. Skeet Ulrich as Billy Loomis is sufficiently suspect, though it's hard to kind of get into this movie without seeing him in his role as in Jericho, the TV show Jericho. Like, it was hard watching this and not seeing his character from Jericho in this. It just goes to show, like, sometimes people get attached to specific characters they play, and it's hard to get out of that mindset. So I think of Jericho, honestly, more so than I do Billy Loomis when watching Scream. I think Jamie Kennedy providing much of the meta commentary really works well in this first movie. I really love the movie rental store scene. Obviously, I've worked in Blockbuster. I worked at Blockbuster for many years, so this hits differently for me. Anytime I see movie rental stores in these older movies, it hits differently for me. So I really like that. David Arquette as Dewey is kind of over the top in this movie in comparison to where they kind of take his character in later movies, and they kind of fix his character, I think, in later movies. But he's interesting here. The final half of this movie at the house is when things kind of kick into gear, and it's really good. Like, the movie's very well paced. Very tight script. I think the first movie holds up really, really well and is arguably still the best in the franchise, in my opinion. Next up is Scream 2. Scream 2 was released 1 year after the first film in 1997, so they definitely rushed this one out there, and there are times in this movie when you kind of feel that. But overall, I do think it's a pretty decent sequel. A great opening sequence in the movie theater. I think that was a really, really solid. One thing you can tell as I go through the Scream sequels is the beginning of the movie and the Ghostface reveal. Those are like two things that bookend each one of these movies throughout the franchise, and I do think this opening sequence with the movie theater is one of the stronger ones. I do actually like it a lot, I think it was a really good way to open this up and really continue on the meta feel for the franchise with it taking a look at the first movie. Like the beginning of this movie, it opens up with them watching a take on the first movie within their movie. I like it with the stab movies and all that stuff. I think it works really well. And the stab movies is carried throughout all of the sequels as well. So the first time it's introduced is here. Hold on, guys. Let me take this call real quick. Yep.
Do you like scary movies?
Not really. Like I said, I'm not really a fan of like horror movies.
Well, do you like Scary Movie? It was funny.
I didn't really like the Wayans Brothers Scary Movie parody. I don't like parodies either.
Do you like the Scream movies?
Well, yeah, I like that. I'm doing a video on it right now. Can I get back to
Whatever your opinion is, I wholeheartedly
All right, well,
disagree.
keep talking
you
if
have
you
a
want, but
terrible
I'm hanging
opinion. Hey, don't hang up.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Obviously, in Scream 2, it moves from a high school setting to college with mixed results, I think, in my opinion. We have a lot of the returning characters. There's a couple new characters. Unfortunately, the new characters don't really stack up. Like, I don't really remember any of their names, really, to be honest. The Ghostface reveal at the end wasn't all that great, but the sequel does do a pretty good job with the returning characters. It gives them more time, fleshes them out. So the returning characters in the sequel are better than they were in the first movie, in my opinion. So that's, to me, one of the strengths of Scream 2. Dewey and Gale, in particular, are a lot better in this movie than they were in the first movie. I think that their characters really play off each other a lot better here in the sequel than they did in the first one. Sydney starts to feel like she really can't escape this darkness and really fleshes out Sydney even more so as a character you kind of feel more for because it's like, oh, this is happening to you again. She even questions her own judgment, around people. Like, yeah, that's what makes this movie work, in my opinion. There's a great meta conversation on sequels in the film class, although their takes on what quantifies a sequel I don't agree with. And as far as what sequels are better than the originals, me personally, I like Aliens more than Alien, but they're also two different genre movies, in my opinion. Whereas Alien was a horror movie, Aliens is a straight action movie. So it's hard to compare them on that level. But my preference is more of an action, so Aliens to me is better. So I think it would have been more interesting if they talked about subgenres or genre switches and sequels or something. But that's just me because I'm a movie buff. I thought it would have been cool to talk about that. There's a lot that works in this movie. Honestly, one of the things that I think really doesn't work is the ending. The ending doesn't pack the same punch as the ending of the first movie. Not even close. This is actually one of the worst Ghostface reveals, I think. One of the worst, not the worst. We'll get into that. Now, Timothy Olyphant's great. I like him in other things. I don't really know what the decision was here. I don't know. Maybe the Ghostface reveal just was missing Matthew Lillard's over-the-top performance. That's what the sequel needed.
Cause let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
Was somebody who was just as crazy as Matthew Lillard in the first Scream movie. But I like Scream 2. It's a solid enough sequel, I think. Next up is Scream 3. The third movie released in the year 2000. It was about a couple years after Scream 2, and it opens up pretty strong with Liev Schreiber's character of Cotton returning. He was obviously more fleshed out in Scream 2, one of the better parts of Scream 2. It opens up Scream 3 with his character, and it really opens up with, I think, a pretty solid opening. It's not to the level of some of the other openings, but it did get you interested in the plot and the story that they're trying to tell here in the third one. But it really just goes downhill after that, in my opinion. Making this movie set in Hollywood, that should have worked great. Like, that should have lent itself so well to the meta humor and the concept of these sequels and the way that they play off each other with the stab movies within the Scream movies. That concept is better than the execution, unfortunately. This movie just doesn't really work for me. None of the new characters stand out. I mean, I brain dumped all of their names probably even before the movie was over. Like, I couldn't remember their names when I was watching it. I can't remember their names afterward. I do know Patrick Warburton played a character. That was kind of cool, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
And Parker Posey played the actress who was playing Gale Weathers in the Stab movies. She kind of works pretty well. She's the only new character I remember, to be honest. She works pretty well. The Ghostface reveal at the end is the worst Ghostface reveal to me. It doesn't pack a punch. It seems pretty dumb. I think the entire plot around Sydney's mother seems very forced and out of place with the rest of the franchise. It feels very shoehorned into making things tie together with the other movies. It just doesn't work. It's high concept with bad execution, right? The pacing's bad in this movie. Also, I was zoning out in specific points. I don't know. I liked a couple aspects of it. There were a couple individual scenes I do think were good. Like I said, the opening with Cotton, I think was a pretty good opening. Sydney runs from Ghostface on the set of Stab. I think that works. That was like the best sequence in the movie, I think, when she's running through the set to try and escape Ghostface. But yeah, the pacing was bad. The dialogue was bad. The Ghostface reveal was bad. I just really didn't like this one. I don't think I'll ever watch Scream 3 again. I have no desire to revisit this movie. Next up is Scream 4. Scream 4 premiered 11 years after Scream 3. And it would also be Wes Craven's final film in this franchise because he passed away. And I'm just going to say it outright. I really like Scream 4. I think Scream 4 is solid. The opening is great. I love the movie within a movie opening. Yes, if you start to question it too much, some aspects of it kind of fall apart, but I think that's kind of what the point of it is. It's supposed to kind of just make you think, but if you think too hard about it, you're like, well, that's kind of dumb, because that's kind of how most slasher movies are. That's kind of how most horror movies are, to be honest. But what it really does at the outset is remind the audience from the beginning what the Scream franchise is about, because it's been 11 years since the last one. It's a meta commentary on horror movies within a horror movie that comments on real world horror movies. And I think that is encompassed very well, very early in the movie. So I really do like the opening. I think the sequel is easily the best at balancing the new characters and returning characters. Like, it's not even close. They do a good job of making you care about some of the new characters, caring about the returning characters. There's obviously some standout characters as well. Particularly Hayden Panettiere's character works really well. She's very likable and interesting. And anytime she was on screen, you're like, well, yeah, I like some of these new characters. She works well. But Emma Roberts as Jill, who is also Sydney's cousin throughout the movie, you're like, okay, well, this is probably like the new Sydney, the way they set that up. I think that works well. Rory Culkin from Signs as this film geek works well as, and also the friend of Rory Culkin's character was in Jericho as well. So I don't know what it is with the Scream franchises, but they've cast two of the bigger names from Jericho in Scream. Skeet Ulrich was in Scream 1 before Jericho, whereas this character, I think, was cast in Scream 4 after Jericho. So anyway, I just think that's an interesting tie-in. But yeah, I thought the new characters worked pretty well. Okay, that's like the second time that the doorbells rang. All right, I'm tired of reshooting this. Let me just go answer the door real quick. All right, well, there was some creeper at the front door. I just stole his mask and told him to go away. All right, let's go ahead and get back to the review.
I understood that reference.
And Sydney, Gale, Dewey are great in this. To me, this is probably the best their characters are in any of the movies. Admittedly, Dewey kind of takes a back seat to Gale and Sydney as far as the returning characters go in this movie. But still, all the characters feel very relevant to the story they're telling in this movie. I think that is one of the things I really appreciated when watching this. Now, there is a lot of meta commentary on horror movies, and how horror movies kind of evolved in between, Screams, the Scream trilogy to Scream 4, because it's been 11 years. So that was pretty interesting. The Ghostface reveal is better than the reveal in 2 and 3. Not even close in my opinion. Still not as good as the first Ghostface reveal, but still pretty solid. I do like that. They comment on the whole plot kind of comments on the fame-seeking culture, which I think is interesting. I do think the ending goes on a little bit too long. There's a couple times when you're like, does it end here? Does it end here? Does it end here? Where's it going to end here? So I do think that was kind of some of the weaker part was towards the very end, because I feel like they didn't know exactly where they wanted to end it. And some of the returning characters survived some pretty crazy attacks. So the suspension of disbelief is kind of pulled to the limit on this one in regards to the returning characters surviving. But I really like this one. I think Scream 4 is solid. It does seem like people don't really like Scream 4, or they think Scream 4 is underwhelming. I don't really get that. I think Scream 4 is probably one of the better sequels. I would say it's one of the better sequels. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get into the most recent movie, Scream 5. Released in 2022, this year, 10 years after the fourth movie. And yes, I'm going to call it Scream 5 because that's what it is. I hate it when franchises get the dumb idea to just name it the first movie. I hate that. They either take it and they just rename it the first movie. So that way when you're talking to somebody, you're like, have you seen Scream? What Scream movie? The new Scream movie. Oh, the newer one? Okay, well, so are you talking about Scream 6 or are you talking about Scream 5? Are you talking about the Scream movie or are you talking about Scream movie? What are exactly you're talking about? You always have to add the date to whatever movie it is you're talking about. Say Scream 2022. That's the one I'm talking about. It's so dumb. Just call it Scream 5. Stop trying to be like witty. It's not. It comes across as dumb. I don't like it. I know this is kind of a rant on naming conventions, but this and when they add they did this with Final Destination. They're like, oh, well, you've seen Final Destination. Here's the Final Destination. They did it with Fast and the Furious also. One's The Fast and the Furious and one's Fast and the Furious. Like dropping the or adding the it's so dumb. Just call it what it is. Scream 5. That's what I'm going to do.
Wow, that was weird.
Anyway, sorry about that little rant, but I really hate when movies do that. So, I do think that with this being, 10 years after Scream 4, I think we would have gotten this a Scream 5 earlier than this if Wes Craven didn't pass away. And because Wes Craven passed away, that meant that this was directed by somebody else. So there was a lot riding on this movie, I think, more so than some of the other sequels, because it had been such a long gap. Wes Craven's not involved in the movie, different screenwriters, different team coming on to helm Scream 5. And I honestly think the first half of this movie is pretty good. Like, I was totally down with the first half of this movie. I was like, man, this could be the best Scream sequel. But then about halfway through the movie, some things start to happen, and I think it fell apart for me personally. But all right, let's get into what I actually like. So I think the meta commentary in this, they dialed it up, and I think it worked well. I think the kills are also dialed up here. I think that worked well. So those are good aspects to actually improve on from previous sequels. I think that they worked really well in this movie. I like the new characters, Sam and her sister Tara. I think they worked really well together. I think that as new characters, I think they did grab me in the movie. I do think that they worked really well. Sam in particular, played by Melissa Barrera, I wrote this down, guys, I think she's the strongest aspect of the movie. Okay. I also like how they utilized tying that character into the first movie. I think that worked really well. I didn't think I'd ever see Skeet Ulrich come back as a Billy Loomis. I just really like what they did with this character. She's very interesting. I like the backstory. I like the way she was portrayed. I think that works really well. Jack Quaid, I think, is really good in this too. I like his character. What would I say? I like his character. Found his character interesting. That's a better way to put it. I do like the homage that they had to Wes Craven because they name one of the newer characters Wes, and they even have a toast to Wes in the movie, and that was obviously a shout out to Wes Craven. I really like that. I did catch that, and I thought that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of time with the friend group in this movie. There's not a whole lot of time given to them, so we never really care. The twins are kind of good. They have some good lines. The twins have good lines at some moments, and they tie the twins directly into Jamie Kennedy's character, which is pretty cool. To me, the real problem with this movie starts about halfway through. As I mentioned, half the movie I really liked, half the movie it started to fall apart. Okay, Spoiler warning, I'm gonna talk about something specific in Scream 5 right now. So if you guys have not seen Scream 5, I'm about to spoil something from Scream 5, okay? 3, 2, 1. The decision to kill off Dewey's character is dumb. It was not handled well. Not just the fact that they kill him, the way that it was handled was not done well. It was dumb. He's in the 5th Scream movie at this point, and he just ended up overpowering Ghostface and shot Ghostface multiple times, then walks away, and then decides, oh yeah, now I need to shoot him in the head. So he goes back, and he gets overpowered, and you find this out retrospectively at the Ghostface reveal, that he basically gets overpowered by a 110, 120 pound girl and is killed. And I didn't like this decision. The execution was bad. The decision was bad. Why? Because Dewey was the only returning character who felt naturally fit into the plot of this movie. Okay. I think that this was a dumb decision. He was the most interesting returning character by far in this movie. They bring back Sidney and Gale after this, and they just don't coalesce with the new characters. They don't coalesce in the plot. They feel very shoehorned in, and I'd hate to say it, but this is easily the worst performance from both of these actresses in the entire franchise. Like, you could tell they were just kind of showed up for a paycheck. That's how it came across to me. That it didn't work. The characters didn't fit in with the plot. I never bought it. I didn't like it. So I basically became disengaged after Dewey was killed off, and Sidney and Gale were kind of forced in the plot. It just kind of derailed everything, in my opinion. Like, it was trying to do too many things.
Too much.
Honestly, the returning characters, Gale, Sidney, Dewey, they all worked far better in Scream 4 than they did here. I don't think they handled their characters very well here, and it really weighs down the second half of this movie, in my opinion, with the decision to take out Dewey. It just derailed everything for me, and I can't really emphasize that enough, because that, to me, that's the main thing I pointed to after I finished the movie. That was kind of the takeaway I had from it. I was like, I don't think that worked at all, and I think it derailed from the new characters and the story they were trying to tell. I don't think it was handled very well. There were some good. There's obviously a lot of good moments in Scream 5. There was some specific things I liked. Like I said, I like some of the new characters. Some of the attack scenes I think were shot really well. There's definitely a lot of things for, Scream 1 fans. There's lots of fan service, I think, in the movie. More so, maybe so, than some of the other sequels. Maybe Scream 4 also had that, but Scream 5, I think, was definitely leaning into the fan service aspect. The Ghostface reveal in this one, it was fine. I do think it was better than Scream 2 or 3, in my opinion. But it's just, I didn't think it was as good as the first Scream or Scream 4. This movie is not bad. Will I watch it again? Probably. I think I would watch it again. And if I say that, obviously it's not a bad movie. To me, it was disappointing, because I think this one had the most potential out of all of them. Well, maybe Scream 3 had a lot of potential on concept, but regardless, I think this movie really stumbled over the finish line, and it makes it not as good as I think it should have been or could have been. So those are all 5 movies. So let's talk about where I rank each one. Okay, Scream 3 is easily the worst. Scream 3 it never grabbed me when I was watching it. You had the initial cotton scene. I was like, okay, well, it's interesting. Let's see what they do with it. They never really did anything with it. The dialogue never really landed. The humor didn't land. The attacks weren't all that good. The scripting characters never really worked. Like I said, the concept was good for this one, but the execution just wasn't there. I don't think Scream 3 is very good. Scream 3 comes in at number 5 on my list. Number 4 would be Scream 5, actually. You can probably tell that by the way I was so disappointed with Scream 5. There's a lot of things I really like in this movie. I really like the first half. I just think they dropped the ball in the returning characters, like I said. And as I said, keep in mind I watch these all back to back. So watching them back to back, I may be coming at it from a different perspective, but Scream 5, I wanted it to be, a number 2 or 3. Honestly, the more I thought about it, it's down to number 4 for me. Now, number 3 would be Scream 2. I think this is a pretty decent follow-up. to the first one. I do wish the ghost face reveal was better, but still some good stuff here. And I do think this is probably the best movie for our main character, Sidney Prescott. I think I like Sidney Prescott the most in Scream 2 out of all of the movies. So that kind of is what bumped it. I definitely could interchange Scream 2 and Scream 5. I think you could probably make an argument either way. But my clear number 2 would be Scream 4. I think Scream 4 is easily the best of the sequels. Because it balances the new characters and the returning characters. They both make sense within the plot. I cared about what was going on, which was, good. The Ghostface reveal at the end, I think, was pretty solid. It was the most engaging of the sequels. I really like the opening sequence. The time jump between 3 and 4 was handled very well in this movie, in my opinion. I do think that this one really strengthened all of the returning characters and really took their characters to a newer level, a better level. And I think the meta humor struck a good balance with everything else that was going on. To me, this is the best sequel, I think. Number 1 is, of course, the first Scream movie. I'd be surprised if people didn't put the first Scream movie at their top, but I certainly understand why somebody might like some of the other ones more than the first one. To me, yeah, the first one's still the best. It has the most iconic opening sequence in the franchise with Drew Barrymore, and not only that, was parodied ad nauseum, right? It's like a quintessential scene of the late 90s was the opening scene in Scream. I think it has the best Ghostface killer reveal by far of the entire franchise. I do think it set the stage for, obviously, the meta humor that defines the franchise. Very nostalgic of the 90s when you go back and watch it. It's just honestly the best one of the 5 to me. That's what I think. But what do you guys think? Everybody's going to have their different rankings. Like I said, I would make an argument maybe between 2 and 5. I might switch around. But I'm pretty confident in 1 being the best and 3 being the worst. Those I'm definitely confident in. But what do you guys think? Everybody's going to have their different rankings. There is no right or wrong ranking. It's just whatever you rank about, how you feel about the movie. So I'd be curious to see what you guys think about these movies and what you would rank them. So comment and let me know. I hope everyone has a great Halloween. And if you're watching this after Halloween, I hope you have a good Halloween next year. This coming year. So, comment and let me know. I want to thank everybody for sticking around on this video. Thank you, subscribers. All of you are awesome. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Geetrue64, and I always tell you the truth.